Welcome back to another episode of our Future Priests on Roman Catholic Media. Today we have with us Reverend Mr. Gregory Barnes, who is a subdeacon on his way to the diaconate and to the priesthood later this year, God willing. And as we do on all these episodes, we're trying to get to know our future clergy better. And I think before this episode, Reverend, we were talking about the fact that your family has always been traditional Catholic, and that's a grace that is not afforded to most of us, probably not to most of your classmates here at the seminary. How did that happen? Your parents have your parents had parents, i.e. your grandparents that kept them out. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
My grandparents on my mother's side, particularly my grandfather, did a lot of research, and he found Bishop Sanborn in the early 90s, I think it was. Bishop Sanborn had married my parents, and my family has always attended traditional chapels. So first it was Bishop Sanborn's chapel in Warren. My sisters attended the school there, and I didn't because I was too young, but my family moved to Highland when Bishop Sanborn moved the seminary down to Florida, and I attended the school taught by the nuns in Highland. And my whole family's had a Catholic upbringing, and I've never seen the new Mass, only traditional Mass, traditional Holy Week. So yeah,
well, and spoiled. It seems like your family just can't do without bishops. You know, the rest of us are just struggling around with priests, but you had Bishop Sanborn and Bishop Neville. So
yes, yeah, and Bishop McKenna. I served for Bishop Neville for a long time. Low Mass and High Mass eventually as an MC, but I also served as a chaplain for Bishop McKenna's Masses until he died. So that was a few years, 4, maybe 5 years. So that was also a rare privilege. I don't think I served for a priest. Actually, the first Mass I served for a priest, I was a torturer. That was I think that was my grandmother's funeral on my father's side, but yeah, I was after years of only serving for a bishop. So it's
for those who don't know Reverend Barnes, this is a perfect example of how he was being trained to be an MC from his earliest days. It was pre-chosen. So having grown up in that atmosphere, you didn't have to deal with many of the challenges that those of us who grew up in the Novus Ordo did. But obviously, you coming from that part of Michigan, coming all the way down to Florida must have been at least a little bit of a temperature shock.
Yeah, Florida is not a comfortable state without air conditioning. Even with air conditioning, it's different. It's very wet. Everything is wet. I just found mold on one of my cassocks this morning, but it's now a way of life. So it's just as long as the mold stays away from the books, it's fine.
And obviously, we're talking about you at the seminary, Hic et Nunc, but how did you get here? When did you know that you had a vocation? Was it when you were a torchbearer at your grandmother's funeral? Did you know sooner? Did you know after?
No, let's see. I started praying to know whether to enter the seminary or not when I was in 7th, 8th grade. So whatever that is, 11, 12, 13. And but I never thought, oh, I'm going to be a priest. I just always wanted to know what to think, basically. After high school, I thought, well, I don't know, so it'd be better to pursue the higher thing and then fail at that, if it comes to failing, and then pursue that which is less high. But that was my thought process. I was told to wait a year after high school for certain reasons, so I did. I attended classes at Lawrence Technological University, and the stuff I learned there I use almost every day by coincidence. So it's a good thing. And but after I was still kind of thinking of the seminary, but after I finished my first year, I thought, well, you know what, I don't know, but it's now or never, and I'm going to be back by Christmas. Yeah, and then I saw Christmas and Easter, and then the next Christmas, and then so this.
And now we're here.
Now we're here.
Why did you think that you wouldn't last?
Well, I hate studying. that's probably number one. After high school, I thought, forget it, I don't want to study. And then I went to college, and I still hated studying, but it was a lot of it was more hands on. But yeah, but
So how did you overcome that? Or would you say that you haven't overcome it, you've just found a way, a modus vivendi?
no, I'm still traumatized by late night Latin studies and philosophy. My first class was in metaphysics, and metaphysics is the hardest of the philosophies. At least for me, it's the hardest of the philosophies. So that was my first class, and yeah, that was an interesting first class. But the stuff you learn at the seminary is really interesting. Philosophy is the groundwork for everything, basically. I mean, I do a lot of. I've always been interested in computers and programming. You can basically take philosophy and put that into a computer, and that's what computers are built on. We can't help but make that happen because that's the way things tick. So it's an interesting science in itself. I think I think it'd probably be hard to really dislike philosophy, and then theology is philosophy applied to God and things pertaining to God. So that's a really interesting science. It's much more difficult, but it's an
interesting
hard not
frame.
to like it.
I hadn't thought about computers and computer programming as a externalization of philosophy, but it's true. And a computer chip can't decide that it's going to identify as a memory card at some point. It just is what it is, and it's programmed to do what it does. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it'll die on you, but it's going to die doing what it was supposed to be doing. What were, apart from studying, what were some of the changes that were most challenging for you or most welcome to you, apart from the moldy weather when you came down here?
Yeah, that was not one of the welcome things. Something welcome was the schedule. I mean, it's a rigorous schedule. There's the bell. You probably just heard the bell over the mic now, but there are many bells. I have to count all the bells in the day, but there are many bells throughout the day. Time to do this, time to do that, and you're late for this, or you're going to be late for that. And it's nice. It's a brainless day in that sense. You don't have to think, except for the first few days when you have your list of courses and tasks. You don't have to think much about the schedule. It moves you along, which is great. That was something very welcome. I didn't really expect that to be welcome, but it was, and it still is. Yeah, I don't think there was anything that really was not welcome here. I came here as it's great. It's what it is, and I like it. So yeah, I don't think there was anything that besides weather aside, there's nothing that just struck me as well. I'll have to deal with this. It's great.
Sometimes lay people have this notion of, the light comes down from the heavens, a voice speaks, you should be a priest. And the way that you described your vocation seems quite matter of fact. If I don't go now, what's going to happen? So I have two parts to that question. One is, what would you say to people who are still tied to this idea that God is supposed to speak to me? And secondly, how did that develop for you? When you came here, did it simply continue on this path? Like, okay, this is the logical thing I'm supposed to do, I'm going to keep doing it. Or did something more develop in you in the sense of, oh, this is how I would like my priesthood to be, or this is why I'm here, and this makes sense now?
Mm-hmm. Well, with the first question, I've thought a lot about that because I think everyone tends to that in some degree. I'm generalizing, but I suppose everyone tends to that in some way. I did a little bit. But if you really want to basically wake up and find a letter at your doorstep saying, you need to enter the seminary, it's probably time to start thinking about entering the seminary. I'm not a spiritual director or anything, but if you really want a sign, you're probably being given the sign.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
But yeah, there's no light. It rarely happens. And when that happened to St. Paul, he was thrown off his horse and went blind. So maybe you don't want that.
Or if you have been thrown off your horse and been blinded lately, you know where you're supposed to go.
Yeah, then you should probably come here. Yeah. But and the second question, what was it again? The second question.
How has your vocation developed? Because you came
Oh,
here,
yes.
you came here quite logically, and has that changed, or have you just continued in that line?
I don't think it's changed much. I mean, it's and there have been some days, especially after a long Latin assignment that took an hour or so, and just like an ablative absolute or a gerundive, just ruins your whole night. Yeah, those are days when you think this cannot work out. this is not going to work. But I mean, overall, it's anytime I thought maybe this is not a good idea, I just put everything aside, sit down, and just do the math, as it were. Saying most of the time, I'd ask myself, do I have a good reason to leave? And every time I just, well, no, it's a stupid reason. so just, okay, well then it's a go. Let's go. Let's keep on going.
I think you're touching on something that's important because, again, lay people don't have a look into seminary life, rightly so. You need to be left alone to do your studies. You don't need a bunch of people walking through here all the time. But I think that idea that seminary life is hard, that people struggle, that sometimes those struggles are necessary as part of their vocation. Sometimes those struggles reveal that they don't have a vocation. And, it'd be interesting to hear your side of what you've seen some of your classmates struggle with and persevere in, and other times what was revealed and why they had to go.
Well, we're a small group, but not a single person here seems to have the same problem, so to speak. Not to sound mean, but everyone seems to excel. I mean, everyone excels in some things. Some people don't excel in other things, and each story is different. They all they have all come here in a different way. Many of them through the Novus Ordo, but most of them not the same way. It's some have said they've always wanted to be priests. Some have said they haven't. they just converted and then said, "Well, I guess I'll become a priest now," and they did, or they're working on it. And I mean, I can't really understand that because that's not. It's not.
I mean, it's something similar
case,
it's similar to you, except yours just started earlier, right? For you, it was just a logical thing that I'm supposed to do this.
Mm-hmm. It seemed to make sense, and yeah, every person's different. I mean, yeah.
I think because what I find interesting about your answer and the way that you're thinking about your vocation is that it can be as simple as I feel like I should be an engineer, or I like law, I should be a lawyer, and the way that you've articulated the way that you thought about the priesthood and trying it out. And I suppose that's what's the worst thing that could happen. You could come to the seminary and find out it isn't for you, but you're never going to know if you don't, at a minimum, come to visit.
No, that's absolutely true. And another thing I thought of was, even if I, let's say I go to the seminary, I'm there for a few months, and it just doesn't work out. Maybe there's one the experience itself is worth it. If you stay here for a week, you'll learn, you'll have insight, and you'll learn quite a bit. It's surprising how much you can learn. Also, I thought if I do fail, if just decide it's not for me, maybe there's some other young man who sees someone who saw me making the effort and says, "Huh, you know what? Maybe I can do that. I can go out there. I can try it." And if failure in that respect means someone finds his vocation, well, or is pushed in that direction, I mean, that's pretty good. It's not too bad, you know.
I wanted to follow up on you commenting that if someone's here for a week, they're going to learn a lot. And we've talked a lot so far about academic topics, but there's so much non-academic learning that goes on here. Obviously,
Yes.
there's the liturgy and all of the things there, but there's also all the other things that Bishop Sanborn's very vigilant about.
Oh yes, there's just the use of the subjunctive. Your language gets corrected, often not. I mean, your grammar gets corrected quite often. So it's or one's grammar, but yeah, there's more than the studies are essential. You can't get ordained without studies. That's a given. The formation involves more than just sitting, having the discipline of sitting at a desk and ingesting a lot of theology and then producing good answers when you're asked questions. One thing I look at a lot as the MC here. One thing I look at a lot is discipline in choir in the chapel, in liturgical choir, sitting in a choir stall during the liturgy, different from singing. That's a small part of the formation, but as the MC, I have to make sure that everyone follows certain rules: hands folded just so, standing, sitting, kneeling, bowing at the correct times. That's just one small part of seminary life. The bishop has asked me to do a bit of research in that area, and it's a lot of work, a lot of things to look at, a lot of things to digest, to follow, and that's again that's just a small part. There, the way you conduct yourself walking around, custody of the eyes at all times, the rule of silence, all these little things throughout the day. That's all part of the formation. Is you can only get that in an actual institution as like the seminary. You can't just you can't read your way to that sort of discipline. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into seminary life. And visiting just a week, you can see all of these different things come into play. The way the seminarians move in choir or don't move and get reprimanded for it. The way seminarians walk around, conduct themselves in class, not speaking before raising a hand or going about chores in silence. All of this, you can see all of this come into play. All the seminarians have to go through this, and it's not the most important thing that the seminary offers, but it is. If that were not offered, this wouldn't be the seminary it is. So you can, if you were to visit a week, you would see all of this come into play, and you would learn all that a priest has gone through in his seminary days, or ought to have gone through in his seminary days, and how serious is the business of being a priest and of pursuing the priesthood. It's a very serious business, and it involves a lot of work. But yeah, it's something that I imagine someone thinking, formation of priests as a layman wouldn't necessarily think of all of this. Mostly just the studies and learning how to say mass, but no, there's a lot that comes into play, and you really get a taste of that when you visit. A few of the seminarians who are here right now, I remember when they visited, and you could tell they were impressed. They saw a side of seminary life that they didn't realize exists. So you can learn a lot just by visiting.
Just to follow up on one of the earliest points you made, someone might ask, well, why does it matter that you have to sit a certain way or have your hands a certain way in choir? Does that matter to our Lord? And obviously I'm asking that just in terms of curiosity. I think I know why. I think quite a few of our viewers might know why, but some of our viewers might not know why, and so I want to ask for them.
Well, if let's see. The church was laid just thinking of folding hands and conducting oneself in ceremonies. The church has laid down a bunch of rules, or tons of rules as to how a ceremony should be carried out and how each person carries out his own little part in the ceremony. And the liturgy is a reflection of the church's dogma. You can learn a lot just by studying the liturgy. Everything we learn in theology, it all is reflected in the Mass. The Mass, and at the Mass, the Divine Office, it lives and breathes all of this, and it's a very, very serious part of the priestly life. To neglect all those little details would eventually ruin the whole thing. I have a bit of experience of training boys in serving and seminarians. I teach the boys in the school here every Friday. I have them come over and we teach different how to serve different bits of the liturgy. Sometimes I throw in little trivia, little bits of trivia for them, but just so that they get used to the ceremonies. But I've noticed people who neglect the little details in ceremonies will ultimately ruin the whole ceremony, and they'll in a way make a mockery of the liturgy, which is not good.
They'll end up having you cross the sanctuary to come move them into a different position.
Yes, and I've done that a couple of times.
I think too, to your point, it's a way for the church to form us away from singularity. If we're focused on, well, this is how I pray. Well, who cares about how you pray? This is how the church prays. And this is public worship. This isn't your private devotion. So during this time period, we're one body, we're together, and we should act that way. That in a sense, anyone who's doing their own thing is now a distraction, not just to the MC. This is something I always beat on altar boys who like to adjust themselves or move around a lot. That I said, everyone in the church can see you. Normally, when you're in the pew, if you move, okay, maybe no one else can see you, or maybe just the people behind you. But when you're an altar boy and you're fidgeting, everybody can see you.
Yes.
And I usually want to strangle them, and I'm saved from strangling them.
Yes. No, that's something I brought up. Every once in a while, I'll have a meeting with all the seminarians, and we'll go through a bunch of points. There's always something that goes wrong. I mean, that's life. But but one of the things I did mention was singularity in choir, and how it's not good. Everyone should be the same, all the same actions. It shows everyone's unified. It's not. I mean, one of the things I said was it's not my country versus your country, my rubrical opinions versus your rubrical opinions, my pride versus your pride. It's all one. It should just be one body, one worshiping body, not many different pieces of Christendom coming together and trying to have a ceremony. No, it's one. It's the unity is very important. That lack of unity can. It makes the MC's day bad because he gets distracted, and if he's bound to the office, then he's also scrupulous over ruining his hour. But no, it's singularity's bad. The same goes for choir, altar boys, people in the pews. They should all be praying in this. They have the same prayer, the same mass. They should all be praying it in the same way. They should these profound bows while genuflecting when the Blessed Sacrament is not exposed. I mean, why? There should be reason in everything you do. The Church has very clearly laid out what you ought to do. Reason would say, do what the Church says. So it's very important. That's true.
Well, you mentioned being bound to the office, which you are now because you're in major orders. What's changed for you as you move from minor to major orders, other than obviously your study load has gotten more difficult as you get closer to the priesthood?
Sleep deprivation. The office takes quite a bit of time, especially in the first couple of months, but I think life has gotten more regulated, more regular since. Actually, I know that it's gotten more regular.
Were
since
you prepping?
being in
Were you
office.
trying to say it before your ordination so you could
Yes.
ease into it?
Yes, yeah, not for too long, but yes, there was a period of preparation, and I've done a lot of research on the office and how it works, a little bit of the history, but so I had an idea, a pretty good idea on how it all fits together, how the hours work. But when you start it, it's a whole other thing. But it wasn't that bad. But it does help make the day regular, which is good. It's nice to have that regularity.
What would you say to any young men who are thinking about the priesthood, but they're not sure, they haven't visited, they don't know too much? What would you say to them?
Well, everyone gives the advice, pray, which it's good advice. It's good advice. That's why it's given. But I would say particularly pray the rosary. It's if there's one person who will help you find your vocation, it's Our Lady. That's for sure. And it's also Our Lady's Psalter, and priests have to say the Psalter. It's the heart of the breviary, so it's a very appropriate prayer to start with, and to continue, of course, throughout your entire life. But if you think you should enter the seminary, just speak to a priest, call the seminary here. Someone will answer the phone and help you. Visit the seminary. We have a long list of visitors now, and people always visit. So many times they visit and they say, that's one and done. It's not for me, but I'm glad I visited. And others come, they visit, and they say, you know what, this is what I want to do, and that's what they do. And if, as I said before, if you are waiting for that letter at your doorstep in the light, you should probably do something about it. So don't just twiddle your thumbs. Just, oh well, I'll wait for something to happen. Well, do something. But yes, no, definitely speak to someone. Definitely.
Well, Reverend, we'll make sure I'll ask our viewers to keep you in their prayers as you move towards your next ordination and the ordination after that. And thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you.